Hello, everyone. We are now at the end of day three with our final fireside chat that, again, I'm so excited about. This chat is about moving back home, but not only moving back home, but moving into a corporate job back home or um, into the government in a government agency, which sometimes can be a difficult thought process when you are trying to move and determine what next. With us today, we have Nadine Matthews Blair, who is the Chief Digital and Marketing Officer of the National Commercial Bank of Jamaica. And we have Renee Robinson, who is the Film Commissioner of Jamaica. And both of these wonderful ladies have been fellows of the International Women's Forum. So brilliant women who have taken the path that not many have. And we are very excited to hear about how they did it. And hopefully for all you that are listening that want to move back to your home country and know that you have a nice, cushy job where you are now, but you have this urge to help your country become a better place, then this is the chat for you. So, without further ado, I am going to get into it by letting us hear from each of these wonderful women about their journey abroad first, and then we will get into the move back home. So let's start with Renee. Renee, can you tell us about your journey moving abroad?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Melissa. And hi, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good night. I don't know where in the world you're joining us from, but it is a pleasure to be here. So, my journey abroad was actually the majority of my life, which has been interesting. So, I grew up, my father used to work for the United Nations. So, I grew up changing country every 3 years. So home for me has always been wherever I happen to be at that point in time. So I had to develop a skill set in creating home, creating family, creating substance, creating purpose, regardless of physical location. And I moved quite a bit. So we moved every 3 years in a different country. And then in my later teenage years, early 20s, continued that trajectory of moving without the family that I had grown up moving in, and spent quite a bit of time in North America. So in both Boston, New York, Toronto, but also in Europe, in Italy, in South Africa. I spent a little bit of time in Costa Rica and Greece. And I lived in Papua New Guinea as well. So I moved quite a bit and then created spaces within all of that. And one of the things that being so consistently external meant for me was that it created for me a belief and a sense in the understanding of culture, of cultural identity, of what it means for us, not just in terms of physical identity as people, but also national identities. And how do we utilize that culture that is embedded in us to create opportunities for growth, economic growth, personal growth, spiritual growth, all of these things, and how do we interconnect with each other? And the area that I found that was most aligned to that for me was in the arts. I've always seen the arts as a method of where we are in the history of our civilization at any given point in time. So everything that we create as people is part of our journey as humans, as civilizations, as societies. And so I found myself drawn to the arts and drawn to the business side of the arts in particular for how that can allow us to create our identities personally and nationally and internationally. So that was sort of my path. I spent a lot of time overseas in all of these various places, always working in the arts, always working in the business of the arts, and also understanding embeddedly that as a Jamaican and as a Jamaican, we know that Jamaica for us is a cultural superpower across the world. And so I knew that this was something that I wanted to be a part of, is to drive that process of development for Jamaica through the arts.
Thank you. I completely understand that it's such a a huge industry for us that now I'm glad to see how well it is being managed in managed a lot better than it was, say, 20 years ago in terms of getting us out there into the public eye. Even though we do have legends, there was still a lot to be done for the smaller people. But moving along, let's hear from Nadine about her journey.
Thank you, Melissa, and good morning, good evening, good night, everyone. My name is Nadine Matthews Blair. Not sure why my camera is not showing up. Are you guys seeing me?
Yep, we're seeing you fine.
Okay, not seeing it on my side, but my journey abroad started when my mother migrated to the US. She's a nurse, so like many nurses, and this continues today, she had an opportunity to migrate. And so she would have migrated first, and then the family, my sisters and my father and I migrated when I was 11 years old. It was a very tough transition at the time. I had taken common entrance, was looking forward to going to high school. And fast forward to today, the fact that I didn't go to high school here, I would say definitely impacted my transition back. So we can talk a little bit more about that. But I migrated when I was 11. We moved into an inner city community in the Bronx. And it was an immediate difference because growing up, I attended Bridgeport Primary School. And as humble as those beginnings were, no one ever told me that I couldn't do anything. I was always bright, I was always smart, I was always encouraged. And so now moving to the United States, there were people who started to doubt my abilities simply because I was a girl and obviously because of the color of my skin. So that was a very new dynamic. But fortunately, I was a bright little black girl and had and continue to have amazingly supportive parents. And so my journey there, mostly in New York, ended up going to the top high school in New York City, Math and Science High School. I then went to university in New York and started my career at JP Morgan Chase as a banker. But decided at the time that I wanted a multinational career. Didn't know what that meant at the time, but decided I wanted to go to business school and to do that full time. So that would have been my first kind of big risk taking, relatively speaking, because people are like, you're going to leave your good job. Jamaicans like talk about your good job. You're going to leave your good job at JP Morgan Chase and go back to business school full time. Like, how is this going to work? And those were legitimate questions to ask because I didn't come from wealth. It's not something that my parents could afford. I was going to have to do it on my own. But I firmly believe when you put things into the universe, things happen. And so what ultimately happened was people pointed me to different directions, and I found out about a program, the MLT program, that I participated in. And through that, I learned about the process and how to apply and how to set myself up as a successful candidate. Eventually got accepted into Wharton Business School, University of Pennsylvania, and got a full scholarship, tuition scholarship. Still had to pay for my room and board. Tuition was sorted out. So I was off. And as part of that experience in going to business school, I'd only been to 3 countries. After business school, I had been to 15. So it was an amazing experience and really started what I believe to be a multinational career. So after leaving business school, I left New York for the first time and moved to Atlanta to join McKinsey and Company, which is a global consulting firm, and had a great experience there. I mean, you learn a lot in a consulting company. You're exposed to lots of different industries, lots of different countries, lots of different people. But ultimately, It was getting on a plane every Monday morning or Sunday night and not coming back until Thursday. And I got to the point where I felt like I'm not feeling the meaning. This is a great, you know, good job. You know, we like good.
It's a good job.
Another good job moment. And so that was a turning point for me. And that was the last position I had before I moved back to Jamaica.
So both of you would have had different experiences in terms of memories of Jamaica, right? Because Renee, you finished high school here, and Nadine, you left quite young. Um, but there was still this yearning, it seems, to go back to this place. Um, and I know that there are many people out there who have this yearning for their countries, wherever their country will be. It's not necessarily a matter of nationalism, but just a matter of just a feeling of home, and a feeling of belonging sometimes. But would you say that that was more, was that a feeling for you? I mean, especially Renee, you know, you feel like home is everywhere because you live so many places. But is it that you feel like there's a pull because of the belonging, or is there something else that was doing the pulling?
I think there is a pull because of the longing for home. There is a nostalgia that we all feel towards it, and I think it doesn't matter how many years you've been at home or how many years, whether you've spent more of your life away or more of your life here, and also at what age and stage, was foundational for you in wherever you call home. But there is a sense of nostalgia, there is a sense of purpose, there is a sense of desire to contribute, to something that we come from. And I think for me, that was always very clear. And so even though I did have to it was kind of, it's like a tool in my toolkit. It's the ability to create home, but at the same way, there is always something that's a little bit missing, that you feel a level of a level of homeness that if on that spectrum of what that is, there is a level of homeness that you always feel drawn to here, or at least that was the case for me. But that also, similar to Nadine, you also still want to be able to continue to explore all the time as well. So I think there is a personality type that plays both of those roles.
So some people are listening now and thinking, I wish I could be working for McKinsey or working in the top entertainment industry institutions, and I don't understand how these people can just get up and and go back home, right? So at that moment when you decided that you're moving back home, can you remember that moment? Can you remember the thoughts? Can you remember whether it felt like you were, whether you felt like you were crazy, or did you think that, oh, this is going to be easy, I can just move back home?
I'll start. So when I decided that I wanted to leave McKinsey because I wanted something that was more sustainable from a lifestyle standpoint, and also to have more meaning in my work, I hadn't made a decision at that point to move home. I had always considered moving home, but at that point in time, I was planning to move back to New York, which was home base because that's where my parents were and that's where they are today. So at the time, a friend of mine who, now happens to be my husband, not really relevant right now. And I was leaving and said, "Oh, By the way, I had done an internship in Jamaica when I was in business school, but there wasn't a full time opportunity. And so that didn't work out. So he sent my resume to 4 CEOs in Jamaica. And Patrick Hilton called me the very same day he got my resume from a stranger. And we spoke, and sometimes you get these signs because I was not clear on what was next. Was going home to mommy and daddy, right? And I got this sign. So we had a great conversation. I came down to Jamaica that December. I, came back to Jamaica from time to time when I was older, and it was something that I could, afford on my own. And then I had an interview with the leadership team there. A couple of days later, I was made an offer, and by February, that was December 2009, February 2010, I started working at NCB.
Wow.
So it feels like a blur, and it was because I literally, resigned, packed up my bags, drove from Atlanta to New York to give my car to my dad. My sister and I were laughing about the trip the other day because it was in a snowstorm. We almost got into an accident. Very, very crazy. But yeah, I mean, my dad was like, "You're crazy. You're gonna
I was
leave
about
your
to ask you.
you're gonna leave your good job and like go to Jamaica. Like, you know nothing about Jamaica." And he was right because I had left at such a young age. Like, what are you doing? And then, all my friends thought that was pretty crazy too. So, didn't have much support there. But I was just kind of like, what do I have to lose? The offer that I took a contract. It's like, if it doesn't work out, I'll move to the States or somewhere else, and I'm pretty sure I'll be fine because remember, I had already said I'm going to have this multinational career. And when I encourage persons to take those risks because sometimes we over catastrophize, what the downside is. Like, if it doesn't work out, just move on to the next thing. So I'd gotten to that point, and so I took the leap and I came for what was going to be a 3-year contract. In year two, Patrick said to me, "Are you really thinking about going back?" And I was like, "No." And then I became a permanent employee. So in 2020, on my 10-year anniversary, my dad was just like, "I'm so proud of you." He acknowledged that he was doubtful, and I knew that, but he's just like, what you've done, and it's put me in a position too to do a lot of things in terms of helping our family, helping them stay connected locally. So it's really come in handy as kind of the family member on the ground in Jamaica to sort out things for them. So it's been a great experience, but don't be afraid to do crazy things. Don't be afraid to take risks. There's no upside without risk, and you don't fail. You learn something in every experience. So that was my mindset going into it. I really just felt like I didn't have much to lose.
This is good. That was a very good. It was good to hear about that because um, there's so many individuals out there that they left early, like you did, or they were not even born in a country, right? But their parents are from that country, and they, for whatever reason, have that longing for that country. And you'll find that the parents are not supportive, so that makes it even more difficult for them. But I'm sure hearing your story, they are going to be more empowered to be able to, say, I can do this, and I'm going to go and apply for my citizenship by descent, or I'm just going to go back to that country that I left when I was 2 years old, and it's going to work. So I'm very glad that you're able to share that story, and go into the detail about, your parents thinking that you're crazy because what they remember of Jamaica is not I mean, they left for a reason, right? So it's to hopefully they'll be able to take your story back to their parents to say, listen, I know that you moved to this other country for better opportunities for us, but it is possible that better opportunities are also available where you are coming from. So thank you for that story. Renee, do you have anything else to add to that?
I do. Nadine, your story just drew out so much from me and my experience as well. There were so many moments in there. Um, I think one of the things that was really important for me as well was the fact that and this may be the case for some of the viewers or not, but having that good job before you actually move back, it does make a difference. It really does. And so being able to do the recruitment process while you are away is really, like, that was crucial for me. I was actually in Italy at the time, and I did 5 interviews with JamPro plus a psychometric evaluation, all online, before receiving the offer to come home. And at that point I came home for this role, and I still had my things were in storage in 3 countries. So I had a storage unit in Toronto, I had storage in Italy, and then I had things that I had moved back to Jamaica with. And there were so many moments where, I might have wanted something and I just couldn't even remember what country it was in. Is it in the storage in Italy? Do I need to, where is that dress? There were so many times that happened to me in the first year. And I remember moving back and also not being certain about whether or not I was going to stay either. And so even just the idea that first year of saying, all right, you know what, I'm just going to stay with family. I'm not going to look to rent a house or buy a house or any of those things. I'm just going to stay with family this first year until I decide if I'm staying or not. But I think the ability, and we're now in a time period where that ability to make some of those arrangements before you make the move are possible, whereas a few years ago it was not. So I really think that sort of planning process was crucial for me as well, in feeling that comfort level to be able to move back home.
Well, I think we all have things in common, because the same, my dad didn't believe I was moving back home until he actually saw. Even when I came back to visit, when I moved, my stuff didn't arrive yet, right? But when the stuff arrived from the shippers, then that's when it was real. That was when they were like, oh, she's really moving back to Jamaica, right? Um, so, but here we are. I think you mentioned a very good point, is that having that good job before you move back is also something good, because it's easier for your value to be recognized. Um, and, you know, um, it's just goes back to, it's a recurring bit of conversation that we've been having on all of these fireside chats, is that you just have to be very prepared. And you have to, if you want to decide, as you mentioned, Nadine, to have an international career, it needs to be something that is within you, and something that you project onto everything else, and to help you to get to that path, right? So even to leave at first, and then to return, for those who are older now and want to leave at an older age, it's crucial for you to be able to identify what is necessary to keep you on that path, and just take the risks. Don't look back, and know that it is not something that is not feasible. Luckily for other people now, I have created this platform where hopefully you'll get all the information that you need and be connected before you leave the country that you're in. But either way, you still have that thing inside to say, am I making the right decision? So let us talk about the process. Do you have any tips for anyone who has now decided, okay, this is it, get up one day and I think it's time for me to go back to my home country? What did that initial process look like? Well, for you, Nadine, we understand that you got the job, but and it was a very quick thing. You didn't really have time to process anything. But for Renee, tell me a little bit about that process.
Well, definitely the first thing I want to start with is even just your own personal preparedness. One thing that happened for me, which I didn't anticipate, and if I had to do it over, I would probably do this thing different, is that I had created maybe an unreal expectation on myself of how I would feel. And so I remember in that first initial stages of moving back and, feeling like, oh, I've lived so many places all over the world and I can pick up and move and I got this, and feeling that it was going to be easy and underestimating the the emotional journey that moving back home would have. So I definitely think that just understanding that this is transitional and there is a level of gentleness and kindness that you need to be able to demonstrate to yourself, and you need to be able to hold yourself in that space for that time, because even if it is something that you've got all of the process worked out and all of the check marks are done and you have the job and a good job, and you know what you're doing and all of that, there's still a level of a personal preparedness that you need to be able to face, and a gentleness that you need to bring to yourself, because no move is easy, no move is smooth, no move is without its own balance that you need to be able to find for yourself. So I think that's definitely one thing that I do want to leave with the audience, is that as much as you can be prepared with all of the things on paper, which is important, and you do need to be able to have those, just remember to give yourself a little bit of kindness as well, because it's difficult.
What are some of the things, the on paper things that we should think about once we've mentally prepared ourselves or think that we've mentally prepared ourselves?
Well, the on paper things, definitely you want to make sure that you're settled in terms of your status. So especially for those who might not have citizenship or residency or work permit or anything like that, you want to make sure that those things are definitely in place, and that you will not have that as a difficulty to enter, and to have freedom of movement and freedom of seeking a job if you have not as yet secured one before you move. I think it's also important that you get in place, the things, like obviously things like for finding home and all of that. You want to get there first and feel the place and get a sense of where you're going to be living before before you move. So I wouldn't even say to find that before you move. Get there, feel comfortable first, and then you decide where you want to live after that. But for sure, start out with getting the status and the things like the bank account and the work permit situation and all of those kind of things sorted.
So sometimes people, like you said, you underestimate moving back home because you think it's home, so it's easy. But the process is just as much as when you are moving to another country. And I'm glad you mentioned like the bank accounts and stuff, because um, sometimes you may think you have a bank account in your home country, and you get there and that has been shut down, and you have to start all over again. And you have to know what that process is, and telephone companies, which one to use. Um, and you're right about not solidifying where you're going to live in terms of the actual place, but actually go back for maybe a couple months first in a short-term rental, see what that's like, and then if that's the area that you want to live in, then commit to a longer stretch.
I would
Maybe
even add as well, sorry, before Nadine jumps in, one thing that happened that I had to be aware of was just even your credit ratings, because you have no credit in this new country, and so getting a car, stuff like that. I remember I had to get an uncle here had to guarantee my car loan, and I'm like, I'm a grown woman, you know. So
exactly, exactly. That's very important, especially with countries that don't have the proper systems in place that aren't fully digitized yet. So that takes a long time, and all of that timing has to be considered in the um, move back home. So. Um, I also, sorry, I wanted to mention too about the permits. So, in some countries, even though you are a citizen, but if you've been gone for a long time, when you return, you do have to look at getting a work permit. And in other countries, if you are not a citizen of that country, but your parents are, then you are qualified for citizenship by descent, in which case you wouldn't need a work permit. So those are the nuances that you can look at when moving back to your home country. Any additional thoughts, Nadine, about the process before we move on?
I would say in hindsight and having met other persons that have moved back for corporate specifically, I do believe you want to make sure that who you're going to work for is super supportive and really wants to have someone who's moving back home on their team. And so I was blessed to have Patrick as my boss because he was super supportive, provided a lot of buffer for me. But you're not gonna get away with in Jamaica in general. You know, some persons and some comments around, oh, this. And I was a young girl. I'm a young now, but I was much younger, right? Because it was 12, 13 years ago. So, get this comment. This is a young girl, move
Think she
back.
know everything.
And know everything. Yeah. And so you really want to be in an environment where you're going to be supported and you can actually thrive and add value. So do research in terms of the culture and make sure that the person that you are going to work for actually will value your contribution to the organization.
Separate from asking the person directly uh, what that is like, what are some other ways that they can, kind of tell if it's a supportive organization? What are some questions they can ask?
Well, one of the good things is that Jamaica is fairly small, so you can do research, talk to persons around what is it like to work with this company. I think that Jamaican companies are even featured on platforms that review companies now. So there's a lot more information than when I moved back. But you talk to people essentially, do your research. You should feel comfortable asking the person that you're going to report to in terms of, what do you expect? Like, what attracts you to having me in particular as part of your organization? What's your working style? Um, what's the development path for this role? Those kinds of questions to tease out how they are thinking about you and the type of talent they're bringing into the role.
I suppose one of the things that LinkedIn is very good for is if it's not a small country that you're moving back to, like Jamaica, then you can seek out people who work for the company and just reach out to them and ask them, what is it like working for that company, and how supportive they are as to individuals. All right, so we are a little bit over, so I want to move on to the next thing of working in moving back and working in corporate or a government agency. Most people feel like they don't want to move back to their home country unless they are doing their own thing and they're on top of the world with their own thing, and they don't think that they can be on top of the world working in the government or in a major corporation. What would you have to say to that?
I actually think it was really beneficial to be able to come home and be a part of an established institution. Um, it's it definitely eased the entry. Um, even in terms of if you were coming home in an entrepreneurial position, you would need to build out your network. Whereas if you're moving home as part of an established institution, you're going to be inheriting contacts and connections, and you're going to be able to inherit, sort of that institutional support in to be able to allow you to expand your role there and to be introduced to people and stuff like that. I think it was actually really beneficial for me to be a part of an institution moving back.
Yeah, similar. I think the complexities that we talked about in terms of you moving back as an individual and working, getting your TRN and your work permits and so forth, those are magnified if you are moving back to start a business. That's a whole different kettle of fish. And I think that's pretty much the same irrespective of what country you're moving to, right? So it's good to come get the lay of the land, establish a network. Many corporates nowadays allow you to have a side business as long as there's not a conflict and those things. So it's something that you can actually build and grow and leave at the appointed time if entrepreneurship becomes the real desired path. But I wouldn't restrict myself to coming back and doing entrepreneurship or nothing at all. The entrepreneurial path is a very challenging one, uniquely challenging, but you're like building from the ground up. Unless you're coming into an existing family business, you're building from the ground up, and that's tricky if you're just coming back for the first time.
Um, Something that you mentioned about knowing the lay of the land when you get to work in an organization, when you return home, is important, because sometimes we think we know the lay of the land because we lived here before. But when you lived here as a child and you live here as an adult, it's two different things, right? And sometimes the comments are not far off, when they say that some people come back and think that they know everything, because they come back like that and not realize that they need to really see how things are operating and then try to improve on things if they need improving, that way. And definitely working within an organization is a very good way to be able to do that. Some people are going to say, but again, you leave your good job with your good salary to move back to um, a country. In our case, it would be a country that would pay less than where we're coming from. What, now that you're in it for 10 years, 12 years, um, to that person out there who feels like this, I don't know if I can manage that cut, what do you have to say to them?
So in moving back, I actually did not take a cut. So I was hired on contract and, like a semi consultant. So I did ask for what I wanted to be paid, and I was able to get that. So I wouldn't make a blanket assumption about that either in terms of what corporates in Jamaica can afford. Obviously, depending on your level. Um, the other thing is corporate in any country has been proven to be not the path to wealth. It's 70% of persons who are millionaires in the US they are entrepreneurs, they're business owners. So I would say that for anyone looking to come back in a corporate setting, to the extent that the salary may not meet their expectations, there are other opportunities. You need to invest. There's passive income. There's real estate, And then, if you're so inclined, you can pursue an entrepreneurial venture full blown. But the first thing is, one, don't presume that you'll have to take a massive pay cut, and two, there are lots of paths to wealth that are not just tied to your corporate job. Especially now, I mean, COVID has, opened up the world in a much different way, where we actually have persons in Jamaica who are working for companies overseas. So persons who are in the tech space. So the big techs are hiring persons who they're saying, I don't want to live in the US. My cost of living is going to be completely different. My lifestyle is going to be completely different. So pay me in US dollars and I'll just continue to live here. Thank you very much. So I would say come with the mindset of not making any assumptions or putting any limitations on yourself in terms of what's possible from an income standpoint.
I would add a third to that summary, and the third one is to ask for what you want. People will give you what they want to give you unless you ask for what you want.
Yeah.
So, and that was a very important point that you made, that you asked. You asked for what you wanted. And kudos to you for doing that. Renee, government is a different ballgame, but let's
Yeah, I had to take a pay cut because it's government and there's set salary scales. So, as much as I am ready and willing to ask for what I want, there's just policy around it. So, but at the same time, um, yeah, it's just something that you have to balance for yourself. So, we all know what it is that is feasible for us in terms of your pay scale and what you need, and whether you're going to take a cut, and whether or not you balance that out with the fulfillment or the reward from being able to contribute to national development and those kinds of things. So it's really just a personal choice, but you definitely have to make sure that you are returning to a space where you are able to increase, to find the ways that you need in order to support yourself, and to find other forms of income if that's necessary as well.
So, as you mentioned that, it just reminded me of the tool that we created in the platform. So we have a tool where the candidates can go in and compare the two countries. So where they're currently living and where they're going back to or going to, and they can compare them on all levels. So you can have a running list of things, things that are hard facts, things that are just your feelings, and also in terms of the change in lifestyle that you may have based on the salary differences. Um, so luckily for the candidates, they have a head start, more so than what we had when we were moving. But definitely, I appreciate the I appreciate that the I'm sorry, I've had this brain fog since COVID hit me months ago, that it just comes and goes. Um, Advice. I appreciate the advice that you are giving to the individuals that are listening. So lastly, I will ask, what has been the most rewarding thing in you moving back to your home country? Anybody?
Um, Renee, you want to go?
Sure, I will, absolutely. Because I have experienced significant reward for moving back, and I think it is stemming from the type of work that I'm involved in. I feel daily rewarded by the ability to be able to contribute to national development, to be able to see the impact that my work has had on the film industry here, to be able to see the changes that have happened over the past couple of years for the practitioners, for my clients, for my stakeholders, for the people who are working in the industry, and the visibility that Jamaica has been able to experience because of the advancements that have happened in the film industry. So I think for me, because of the type of work that I do, I really do feel a daily reward from having moved back home. I've had opportunities, outreach from other countries that want me to be able to come and work with them to build out their film industries. So, in a very similar kind of way that I've been working with Jamaica, and even in places where I know that there would be, greater financial reward in that, and there's something about that that doesn't drive me in the same way. So I definitely feel a sense of national pride. I feel a sense of commitment and fulfillment to the industry here and to the work that I've done that I don't know that I would receive from doing the exact same type of work in somebody else's country.
Nadine.
So similar for me when I left McKinsey, like I said, I just wasn't finding the meaning in the work, and so my professional experience here has been very rewarding and meaningful. In addition to my role as Chief Digital and Marketing Officer at NCB, I'm also the CEO of the NCB Foundation. So day in, day out, we are having impact on the lives of the most vulnerable across Jamaica. And even in the non-foundation piece of it, when I moved back, NCB was in one country and we had a little operation in Cayman. We're now in 21 territories with the acquisition of a stake in Clarion in Bermuda and then Guardian, which was the first time that a Jamaican company in a long time had taken a stake in a Trinidadian company. I've seen the growth and I feel good playing a part in that. And I, firmly believe that financial services helps to empower people. That's how you buy your home. That's how you go to school. That's how you protect yourself and leave a legacy for your family. So that work has and continues to be very meaningful. The lifestyle is much different here, and I I have two daughters now, and I want to raise them here while they're young. Because when I look back at my US experience, I do feel that a lot of my success stems from the fact that I grew up in a country where the majority of people looked like me. And no one, at least in my younger years, told me I couldn't do something because of the color of my skin. So those seeds of inferiority were never planted. And it made a huge difference in terms of my confidence and overall success. And I want that for them. And finally, I mean, when I left the US, and I think all of it culminated in what happened with George Floyd and the subsequent shifts that we're seeing in corporate America. But those microaggressions and those glass ceilings and those, the average black woman is making 62 cents on the dollar of what a white. I was living that every day, and it's exhausting. And so I really had no desire to go back to that. So all in all, it has been, and it continues to be, a very rewarding transition. Not without its challenges, because that's not life. But net net, it was best decision I could have made for myself.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry you had to be going through that in the US. I think we all know what that is like at this point. But I thank you guys both, not just for coming on this talk, but for all that you've done for Jamaica since being back. I mean, I have seen both of you just rock it. Um, you've you're all one thing is that you're always very proactive in not only being your best self, but making sure everybody else around you is being their best self as well. Um, And I want to thank you for that. To our listeners, I hope that you are seeing the theme here around international moving, whether it is you are moving back to your home country or you're moving out of your home country. It is very important to detach yourself from this urgency of needing to move, that you are clouding your mind and not seeing what it is that you want for yourself in life in general. By knowing what you want in life, out of life in general, and working towards it in that respect, wherever you are, you will do what it takes to be the best. And when you start to do that, then opportunities will just keep opening themselves up to you. Um, so as all of these women have said, Nadine, Renee, Lysandra, and of course the men, Pierre Paolo and Mark have said, a key thing to this move is that you are putting yourself out there, putting your best self out there, no matter where you are, what you're doing. Always be building up yourself in towards your goal, and have a plan. Have a plan when you're going to move, and stick to it. And know that it is not necessarily a bed of roses, but you'll get there. You have to be proactive. With that, I say thank you again.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank
No.
you.
I hope everyone has had a good time listening, and I hope that things are going well in the job fair on the back end of the platform. Again, I want to reiterate, hiring managers, make sure that you are proactive in reaching out to the candidates, because they
Renee, are you there?
I'm here. I'm seeing some freezing action going on Melissa's side, but we're both still here.
All right. Is it
But
Regal? Okay, sure.
all right. No problem. Well, I think we were just, well, Melissa was wrapping up. It sounds as if she's had a technical difficulty, but so we can wrap up. Absolutely. It was an absolute pleasure to be here. As you guys can see, night come catch me. You can see the darkness in my background. I don't have on any lights at home just yet. So night come catch me, but it was definitely a pleasure to be here. And I know, based on my experience of this move and of traveling in general for work, it's really one of the best things that you could do with your life if this is something that you see your life progressing towards. And a platform like PopMe is really, like, I wish I had this when I was moving back.
I know, I know, totally agree. So all the best to all of you. Feel free to drop me a note on LinkedIn if you want to ask me any more questions.
All right.